Hello and welcome to the Bowling University studio from the International Bowling Campus in Arlington, Texas. I'm Kelly Bednar, your host for this episode. Thanks for joining us. If you're joining the Profit Break for the first time, welcome. We're glad you're here. Give us 15 minutes and you'll be on your way to improving your profitability. Today we have with us a member of the Classic Task Force and one of our Brunswick A2 4-day school instructors, Mr. Stuart Treutel. With over 30 years of industry experience, most of which on the A2 pinsetters, these legacy machines, and mostly time on those machines. His knowledge and patience and communication skills are why we have asked him to join us today. Stuart, great to see you again, and thanks for joining us and taking the time to be with us here in the studio.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
Hey, you and I have traveled the country doing these 4-day schools, and I got to tell you, with working with you, I've learned a ton, and I have to admit, people know we've talked about this before. I got some A2 experience working on the machines, and I learn every time I'm with you. And last time we were together, I asked you, can you tell me if you had just one thing you could fix, one thing that you had to go into a center and cut stops down, what would that be? So tell me, what would be the one thing you would fix?
And the first thing I would check is the indexing and make sure that it's working properly. There's a couple of things that you can do, and we'll go through that here in a little bit.
All right, so when you say indexing, what exactly do you mean by indexing?
Indexing is when the turret goes to each individual station, and then stops and it waits for a pin, and then it indexes and goes to the next station in the turret. And that's the indexing part of it.
Okay, so on the screen here, we're showing a pin tripping this, and that's called the index lever, right?
Indexing trip lever, yes.
Trip lever. Mm-hmm. So this video here we took out on the road. It shows a pin is not indexing by its own weight alone. It should just sit there and trigger it by itself, right? Is that what you said?
Yes. Right? Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's not the falling of it. It just its own weight should be triggering it. And in this video we're showing here, it's not doing that. Correct?
Correct.
All right. So that is a failed to index in this case by the weight alone. So the other thing you showed. The other thing you showed me was that that the pin can get tied up in other ways. Right? It could be something else binding that up.
Mm-hmm. Yes, when the pin comes over the top of the cross conveyor and falls into the station, the turret wires can be a little bit tight or a little bit loose. The reason that you're going to do this adjustment or do these checks is if you have pins in the 7 and 8 pin deck chutes or blackouts in the 7 and 8 pin chutes, this is a good thing to check first.
Okay, because they fall through or they get caught up, or it's a clue that we have an indexing issue, right?
Yes,
oh,
yes.
Good.
So the first thing you want to do, you can see as we're going here, is that you want to check the side to side of the pin. Make sure that it's able to actually go onto the trip lever. These turret wires here are a little bit tight, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bend them. Okay. That's the adjustment to it.
Okay. So
and then you want your 1/8 inch gap on each side. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was my next question. So you want the 1/8 inch clearance on each side of the bowling pin to make sure there's a little bit of room, right? So it's not supposed to be snug against the pin. You need that 1/8 inch clearance on there. And then you just said something. You said go ahead and bend the turret wires.
Yes.
It's okay to bend those.
It's okay to bend those, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then you want to also line up the turret wires with the cross conveyor itself too.
Okay. So in that sense, let me go back to this one because we have this on the screen. The snubber is part of that 1/8 inch, right? So it's not just side to side, it's front to back, right?
Yeah, yes, it's also front to back, and the snubber is adjustable. There's a slot in there where you can adjust it forward and rearward. Most of the time when I go into places, I see that people just back it all the way off. But you also want that 1/8 of an inch from when the pin is straight up between the back of the pin and the snubber. And you almost got to look at this almost like a box where, you got the side to side and you got the front to the back.
Yeah, I referenced the box because that term I got from you. I'd never heard it anywhere from anybody else. And I remember when it kind of like an aha moment for me. I think I took my little aha card and filled it out because, okay, I got my eighth on the left and right, and I got the eighth front to back, and now I can actually create this like kind of a triangle or box of the 1/8 inches that allows me to kind of, okay, now I can see that. And then you mentioned also get those turret wires lined up kind of with the cross conveyor so they can be bent left and right so that you can get it all there. And when you say that, oops, I should have done that there, brought that up. So snubber adjustment, there's our 1/8 inch. We had the previous slide, had the other 1/8 inch. And then here's a video of you actually bending the wires. And I was like, I caught me by surprise. I didn't realize that was that easy of an adjustment. Now the pin goes in there and goes down onto the indexing trip lever much easier. In this particular case, it still didn't trip. We had something else that needed to be done. So that's when the next question is, okay, I've bent the turret wires. I've got them in alignment. I've got my 1/8 inch box. What's next? What happens next?
Then you want to check your indexing trip lever adjustment. I believe it's adjustment number 41 in the pinsetter manual, the Brunswick pinsetter manual. And what you're going to do is right there, the rear seat of the indexing trip lever, as you move it more to the rear, what it will do is it will allow the turret to index easier. But the problem with this adjustment, here it is right here. You want to loosen that rear stop nut, and the more that you go forward, the more it's going to allow the turret to index. It's almost like a Goldilocks thing where you want it just right, because if you get it too far forward, then the turret will multiple index.
Okay, it's a whole nother episode. We'll have to shoot later another time. So we're talking about failure to index on this one here. So if I tighten that up too tight, if I bring that nut too far forward, it's gonna trip too easily. Vibration may trigger it, or a pin rattling around. It's still in there. Just the fact that the turret moving itself may trigger it and have it indexing multiple times. If we're too far back, what we saw in our first video here is that the pin's own weight wasn't triggering it enough. So that's kind of the guideline is that the pin, just taking a pin and sitting on it and letting it go, should trigger that turret, that indexing. We're here, and this is the adjustment. Back it off a little bit, and then come right up against it, and that should be about where it is. So you loosen the rear jump, back off the rear stop till it connecting, and then rotate the nut until it makes contact with the trip lever itself, and then tighten it back up. Pretty much it.
Yes. Yep, that should do it. Yeah. And then what I also like to do is I like to check to make sure that the indexing latch is going over the top of the roller, right here. And a good indication is that indexing latch is parallel to the turret frame, and the turret frame is off to the right there. And also check your linkage first before you make any of these adjustments. Make sure everything's nice and tight, nothing's worn, because if you have a worn part, this adjustment, you'll keep trying to make this adjustment and it won't work. So make sure everything's nice and tight and working properly.
Oh, so that's a nice little tip. I mean, this is a nice on-the-go immediate adjustment that we can get through a league night, but go back and check that linkage afterwards. Otherwise, you're fighting yourself, right? Is that what you're kind of saying there? You're saying that you could be making this adjustment over and over again if that linkage is worn.
Yes.
Right, and that's a fairly easy fix of fixing those. You're looking at some bushings there, and that C-link there on the bottom is just to make sure that it's all in place. Well, Stuart, I mean, quite simply, that's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's an easy bend the turret wires, keep them in line with the cross conveyor, keep your 1/8 inch box or triangle, and make sure you got snubbers in there too. Because I've seen a lot of those snubbers too far back. And if you go back to the old machines, that you had that wire movable snubber, right? So that's the old school stuff. So now we're talking here, quite simply, easy stuff, basic stuff to keep you guys get your stops in the indexing solved. So watch for future episodes where we get a little more into the multiple indexing, the other side. So thank you, Stuart, for taking your time. But as we wrap up another edition of the Bowling University Proper Break, remember, when your focus is on growing your people, people will grow your business. We look forward to see you for a next episode in the future. If you have any questions about today's show, attending a boot camp or a school, or just like additional maintenance information, you can reach us anytime at education@bpaa.com. Also, you and your team can watch any of our previous episodes by visiting bowlinguniversity.net. The Profit Break is available whenever you want it. We have new episodes premiering every month. Until then, I'm Kelly Bednar, and do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. See you next time.